She walked in quietly, dragging her worn-out suitcase across the marble floor of the luxury hotel she had saved months to visit. Her clothes were plain, her hair tied in a loose bun, and her eyes held a kind of tired hope. But before she could even make it past the front desk, the hotel's CEO, an elite blonde woman in designer, he swept down like a storm. With a tight smile and cold eyes, she called the woman out of place and demanded she be removed. Guests turned to look. Some whispered. No one helped. Within minutes, security escorted the simple woman out onto the curb, her dignity shattered, in front of strangers. But what the CEO didn't know was that someone very important had watched it all unfold from a black luxury car parked just outside. A man powerful, wealthy, and deeply connected to the woman who was just humiliated. He stepped out, adjusted his cufflinks, and made one call that would flip the entire hotel upside down. What happened just 9 minutes later left the proud CEO speechless. The staff scrambling, and the simple woman at the center of a stunning twist no one saw coming. The man who stepped out of the car was none other than Cleus Grant, media-shy billionaire and one of the most powerful hotel investors in the country. Known for his calm demeanor and sharp mind, he rarely showed up at his own properties unannounced. But today wasn't business. Today was personal. He watched the scene unfold without saying a word, but the moment the CEO mocked the woman and called her a charity case, his expression hardened. That simple woman wasn't just any guest, she was his wife. They had quietly married just months ago, far from the spotlight. After meeting during one of his low-profile charity projects, she never wanted the fame or riches that came with his name. All she wanted was a quiet getaway to the hotel they once dreamed of visiting together. She didn't even use his last name on the booking. Back inside the hotel, the CEO, Clarissa Monroe, was already bragging to her assistant about putting people in their place. She had no idea her arrogant move was about to cost her everything. Staff murmured nervously as the front desk phone rang, and a strange tension swept across the lobby. The name on the caller ID made their hearts skip. Nicholas Grant. Clarissa Monroe froze when the front desk clerk whispered the name to her. Her confident smirk slipped for the first time. She quickly brushed it off, straightened her blazer, and marched toward the private office, heels clicking louder than her heartbeat. Meanwhile, hotel staff exchanged worried glances. They knew Nicholas Grant rarely involved himself in day-to-day operations, and when he did, it usually meant something serious. Outside, the woman Nema sat quietly on a bench, unaware of the storm brewing inside. She didn't call her husband or complain. She just stared at the fountain across the street, trying to hold herself together. People like Clarissa had underestimated her all her life, and honestly, she was used to it. But this time, it stung. Not because she was insulted, but because it happened in a place she and Nicholas once called their dream. Inside the hotel, Nicholas was already on the line with the board. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. Every word he spoke was calm, precise, and chilling. He asked for Clarissa's employment record, internal complaints from staff, and most importantly, security footage from the last 30 minutes. Meanwhile, Clarissa ordered the front desk to delete the check-in record. But someone was watching. Someone with a quiet grudge and a phone full of secrets. As Clarissa barked orders, her assistant hesitated. The request to delete records wasn't just shady, it was risky, especially with Nicholas Grant involved. But fear kept her silent, at least for now. She glanced at her phone, where she had secretly saved the security footage just in case. Not for justice, not yet, but for leverage. She had worked under Clarissa for 3 exhausting years, watching her crush careers, humiliate staff, and rewrite policies for her own benefit. Now, finally, there was a crack in her armor. Outside, Emma stood up to leave, unaware of the quiet war unfolding behind the hotel walls. But before she could call a ride, a black SUV rolled up. Wasn't her husband, it was his personal advisor, Thomas. He stepped out briskly, his expression unreadable. "He asked you not to leave," he said gently. Emma blinked, confused. "Why?" "I don't want to cause a scene." Thomas gave her a small, knowing look. "You already did." Without saying a word. Upstairs, Nicholas entered through the private elevator, bypassing the lobby entirely. His presence sent whispers down every corridor. Board members were already dialing in. Clarissa, pacing in her office, suddenly found herself locked in. From the other side, Thomas's voice echoed calmly. "You might want to sit down. This is about to go very wrong for you." Clarissa's face drained of color as she turned toward the locked door. Her hand trembled slightly, but she kept her voice sharp. "You can't do this. I'm still the CEO." Thomas didn't respond. The silence was louder than words. Her computer lit up with a forced login override, something only top-level investors could authorize. Within seconds, emails began disappearing, files vanishing from her hard drive. She tried to stop it, but the cursor moved on its own, controlled remotely. That's when she realized this wasn't just disciplinary. This was removal. Downstairs, Emma followed Thomas into a private lounge. The staff now suddenly polite opened doors without question. Some even lowered their eyes in shame. One housekeeper quietly slipped her a note. "I saw everything. I'm sorry." Emma folded it slowly, her emotions unreadable. She didn't want revenge, but she also couldn't ignore what had been done. As Nicholas entered Clarissa's office, a new voice cut through the tension, one no one expected. It was the assistant. She had plugged her phone into the main screen, revealing a secret video, one that showed Clarissa meeting in private with a rival investor weeks earlier, leaking confidential hotel data. Nicholas paused, his jaw tightening. "So this isn't just about mistreating a guest," he said coldly. "It's betrayal." Clarissa stared at the screen, frozen. Her assistant stood silently beside Nicholas, no longer hiding behind fear. The footage made everything clear. Clarissa hadn't just humiliated a guest or lied to cover it up. She had been feeding confidential hotel data to a competing chain in exchange for promises of a higher position. The betrayal ran deeper than anyone expected. Nicholas turned to her, voice calm but final. "Your contract is terminated effective. Immediately, legal will follow." He stepped aside, letting hotel security in. Clarissa tried to speak, but no one listened. Her power vanished as quickly as it had come. The same staff she once barked at now watched her be escorted out of the office she once ruled. Downstairs, Emma sat quietly, sipping tea as news spread through whispers. She never asked for vengeance. Still, it came not from her, but from truth itself. Nicholas finally joined her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry you were treated like that," he said softly, "but I'm proud of how you handled it." Then came the twist. Just as Emma reached for her bag, a hotel employee ran in, holding a folder. "Ma'am, this is for you," she said. Breathlessly, side was a letter Clarissa had tried to hide, a legal offer from Nicholas made weeks earlier, giving Emma full ownership of the hotel. Emma stared at the letter, her hands trembling slightly. It was reassigned, sealed, and dated weeks ago. Nicholas had planned to surprise her with the hotel as a gift. Something to call her own after all the quiet sacrifices she'd made. But instead of a celebration, it had turned into chaos. She looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief. "You were going to give me this?" He smiled gently. "It was always yours. I just hadn't told you yet." News of the scandal spread quickly, but so did the story of the woman who rose above it with quiet strength. The hotel staff, many of whom had once felt voiceless, now found hope in new leadership. Emma didn't walk in and fire everyone. She sat down with them, listened, and promised change. Her first act wasn't revenge. It was restoring the dignity Clarissa had taken from so many. Nicholas stood by her, proud not just as her husband, but as someone who saw what true grace under pressure looked like. And as the hotel reopened under new leadership, guests returned with curiosity and admiration. In the end, the elite blonde CEO was forgotten, but the simple woman who owned the hotel became unforgettable.